The man was about to get intimate with the beautiful woman. Suddenly, the bushes ahead started to shake violently. Immediately after, the woman, seeing this scene, wanted to run away, but the killer slashed her carotid artery with one stroke. Not long after, a group of young people arrived at the cemetery at midnight, only to find the grass on the graves was 2 or 3 meters high. They tried to light candles, but after several attempts, they were blown out by an evil wind. At this moment, seeing a companion tangled in the grass, one of them immediately used a knife to cut the grass, but the grass erupted with a large amount of blood. Still reeling from the shock, another person was pulled into the bushes by a mysterious force. The others followed and cut the grass by the roadside with their knives, and the splattered blood hit everyone's faces. At this point, a girl screamed in despair that she wanted to leave. However, the next second, bullets couldn't harm the killer at all. The crowd scattered in fear and fled, but why was the killer invulnerable? Could the fleeing group escape this disaster? Let's look at this Filipino horror film together. In the dead of night, a bus was speeding down the road. The driver suddenly slammed on the brakes. Mary, who was dozing off, was jolted awake. Dazed, she looked around, only to find the bus had stopped in an unfamiliar place. It was clear that they hadn't reached their destination. Mary was very confused and asked why they had stopped here when they hadn't reached the stop. "Why did we stop here?" The driver, somewhat impatient, said he was in a hurry to get home for dinner. However, he was willing to refund her ticket. Though Mary was very reluctant to hear this, she saw the driver's determined demeanor and realized it was useless to argue further. She had to get off and stand by the roadside. Watching the bus drive off in a cloud of dust, she anxiously glanced around. As she was about to head home, a man suddenly rushed out from behind her, then grabbed her. Mary's eyes widened in terror. She pulled out the self-defense spray she always carried and sprayed it directly in the man's face, but to her despair, the spray seemed to be a defective product. The man only coughed a few times and quickly regained his composure. Then, the man dragged her toward the nearby grass. Mary had a strong will to survive and found another opportunity. She broke free from the man's grip and ran for her life. But she didn't get far before the man caught her again. He pinned her to the ground. The man had malicious intent and was about to get intimate with Mary when the bushes ahead suddenly started to shake. The man even shouted at the bushes, inviting whoever was there to join in. Though Mary was extremely frightened, she still forced herself to stand up, wanting to thank the person who might help her. But when she saw the mysterious person's appearance, she nearly died of fright. She involuntarily began to back away. Before she could react, the mysterious person suddenly raised a large machete and swung it down. Mary died just like that. The next day, the police brothers came to the scene to investigate the Bush murder case. They arrived at the crime scene to examine it. As they examined the area, they discussed why the victims had all died from asphyxiation. The strange happenings earlier didn't catch their attention, and they were more concerned about whether the land prices would drop after the murder. Officer John even started fantasizing about the future, thinking about buying a piece of land to build a luxurious villa. It was as if he had already become the owner of the villa. He even said he wasn't afraid of the killer at all, believing that the killer wouldn't dare to kill him. Just as they were talking happily, someone suddenly rushed over. Shouting for help, John and his partner George immediately stepped forward to grab him. But before they could ask any questions, the man was pulled into the bushes by a mysterious force. John and George reacted quickly and immediately pulled out their guns to chase after him. By the time they caught up, they saw that the man had already been taken hostage by the mysterious person. The mysterious person didn't give them a chance to negotiate at all and slashed the man's carotid artery with one stroke. John fired a shot into the air to frighten the mysterious person, but the other party acted as if they hadn't heard and quickly disappeared with the body. John and George looked bewildered, not understanding how the mysterious person vanished in the blink of an eye. Filled with confusion, they carefully searched the area. Eventually, they found the man's body. Strangely, the body had no trace of blood on it at all, and there were no wounds on the neck either. It looked more like he had been suffocated. Worried that there might be other victims, they continued searching the vicinity. Sure enough, they found a car, but the people in the car were already dead. George immediately contacted the police station to send someone over. Suddenly, a strange noise came from the car. A panicked boy ran out of the car and then took off running. George and John hurried after him, but the boy was running far too fast. They had to encircle him from both sides. However, as soon as George stepped into the bushes, he felt that something was off. It seemed like danger was approaching. Unexpectedly, the mysterious person appeared behind him. Fortunately, George sensed the danger and immediately ran out of the bushes to regroup with John, continuing to chase the fleeing boy. They chased the boy into an abandoned villa. At first, they thought the boy was an accomplice of the killer, but when they saw the boy, Charlie, curled up in the corner, trembling in fear, they realized that things were not so simple. Before long, other police officers arrived as well. After investigation, it was found that the man who had just died was there to purchase land in the area. He thought that with a murder occurring, the land prices would definitely drop, so he hurried over, only to lose his own life. The police cleaned up the crime scene and were about to leave when other colleagues brought a group of armed young people. George saw the boy holding a machete and immediately snatched it away to inspect. The others explained that the knife was just for cutting weeds. George then asked them why they were there, but these young people were more and more arrogant, shouting that they wouldn't say anything at all. George had a way to deal with them, and he said seriously that 4 people had already died here. If they didn't want to be taken back to the police station as suspects, they should quickly tell the truth. The girl, Betty, immediately said no and then explained that they were there to visit a grave. The woman who was recently murdered was her aunt. She felt it wasn't safe to come alone, so she called a bunch of friends to keep her company. After hearing this, George didn't know what else to say and had to let the others take Charlie back to the station for questioning, while he and John stayed behind to accompany Betty and the others. But they didn't know that these young people weren't telling the whole truth. When they arrived at the crime scene marked with police tape, they surprisingly said that this wasn't the primary scene of the crime. In fact, Mary had been killed under the tree ahead. After saying this, they all moved to the big tree, whispering about lighting candles, but after trying for a long time, the candles just wouldn't light. When they finally managed to light one, it would be blown out by an evil wind. At this moment, a girl suddenly screamed for help. Everyone quickly ran to her aid and used the machete to cut the grass that was entangling her. To their shock, a large amount of blood gushed from the grass. This bizarre sight left everyone frozen in place. At this moment, John and George sensed that something was wrong. They rushed forward and quickly asked what had just happened. The others immediately pursued after them. Because the surrounding weeds were tall and dense, they could only keep swinging their machetes. They were all splattered with bright red blood. John and George, who were following behind, were also astonished. Having lived their entire lives, they had never heard of any kind of grass that could spray blood. At this moment, a few young people's mental states completely broke down, and they revealed all the secrets they had been keeping. They said their parents had killed someone, and now the ghost was coming to take revenge on them. John urged them to explain further, but the mysterious person suddenly charged out and killed a girl. George fired several shots at the mysterious person, but the other party seemed completely unharmed. Everyone was terrified and fled in all directions, but the mysterious person quickly caught up with them. One boy, in order to buy time for his girlfriend to escape, bravely fought with the mysterious person. Inevitably, he was killed. Betty and the others ran out of the bushes and were astonished to find that all the blood on them had vanished. Betty realized that the mysterious person could only exert power in the grass, therefore, they absolutely could not enter the bushes again. George suggested they could go to the abandoned villa ahead. Just as they were about to leave, 2 more people emerged alive. The girl who just came out, Kate, glanced at the bushes and screamed frantically in fear of the mysterious person, yet she still wanted to rush in to take revenge for her dead boyfriend. Betty hurriedly pulled her back and took her along with them. Then they arrived at the abandoned villa. John asked about the matter of their parents killing someone. Betty had to tell everything. It turned out that their relatives had once lived on this land, but the manager of the real estate company, Jack, insisted on forcibly acquiring the land and escalated the situation, leading to murder. So Betty and the others' parents conspired to bury Jack alive for revenge. Unexpectedly, after Jack died, he transformed into a vengeful ghost and continued to haunt them, which made it impossible for them to live normally. That's why everyone came over to try to resolve this matter. At this moment, John discovered that the villa was also overgrown with grass. This meant that hiding here was also unsafe, so he immediately called everyone to go upstairs, but upstairs was just as filled with weeds. Everyone could only cautiously search for a safe hiding place, but the mysterious person suddenly charged out to attack. John and George quickly raised their guns to defend themselves, and then found an opportunity to retreat to another room. Everyone nervously stared at the doorway. Suddenly, someone said that the boy, Perry, was missing. At the same time, Perry had scattered away from the group, and he was not in the villa at all. Suddenly, he saw the mysterious person. Unconsciously, he began to step back and slowly backed into the grass. His fate was, as one could imagine, dire. On the other side, George and John found that the walkie-talkie finally had a signal and immediately contacted their colleagues to come and rescue them. However, their colleague first informed them of one thing: Charlie had been taken away. It turned out that Charlie was the son of the current landowner, so it wasn't strange for him to be at the crime scene. The police had no authority to detain him. The next day, to clarify the matter regarding Charlie, John and George arrived at Charlie's house with a search warrant. Upon entering, they discovered that Charlie wasn't home at all. The old man in the wheelchair was furious and said he had sent the disgraced Charlie to a rehab center. Immediately after, John and George went straight to the rehab center to ask the nurse about Charlie's condition, but they were informed that Charlie had long since stopped using drugs. It was just that he frequently experienced hallucinations, which made his father mistakenly believe he had not detoxed yet. Later, John and the others went to see Charlie and found that his mental state was indeed not quite normal. However, through some fragmented information Charlie provided, John and George believed that he must have witnessed Betty's parents and others committing murder. However, Charlie's father was afraid that the land would decrease in value and locked up his son for drug use. Then John and the others ran to find Betty. When Betty saw the two of them, she excitedly brought them into the house. But a couple in the house got up to leave when they saw the police. Betty hurriedly called them to stop, questioning the couple if they didn't want to find the missing Kate. Were they just going to avoid their own mistakes, ignoring the life or death of the child? Kate's parents, upon hearing this, finally came to their senses and were willing to cooperate with the police. They brought out a photo of the murdered Jack. George asked Betty to identify if the person in the photo was the mysterious person. Betty looked closely for a moment and said their teeth were different, but they looked very similar. George then asked Betty's parents if they were sure they had really killed Jack. They gave a definite answer, saying they had nailed the coffin containing Jack shut, and after burying the coffin, they had deliberately stayed and watched for an hour to confirm if Jack was really dead. George suggested digging up the coffin to check later. While Betty and the others were packing, George called John aside and said they couldn't fully trust Betty and the others yet. He suspected that Kate had run into the grass alone to take revenge for her boyfriend. Next, they contacted their colleagues for help, asking them to search the grass for Kate while they went to dig up the coffin. John and the others arrived at the tree with tools and began to dig. Suddenly, Betty was grabbed by the mysterious person. Everyone hurriedly dropped their tools to rescue her. At this moment, the mysterious person was choking Betty by the neck. She struggled desperately and managed to break free. Running for her life, she fled with all her strength and realized that the mysterious person was not pursuing her. She cautiously observed her surroundings. Suddenly, someone grabbed her from behind. It was Charlie. At this moment, George rushed over with his gun. Charlie unexpectedly confessed that he had killed everyone, blaming his father for sending people to acquire the land. Then he started saying some strange things. George knew that he had mental issues, so he tried to calm him down and told him not to act impulsively. Suddenly, George noticed that the looks in Charlie's eyes were off. George fired several shots at the mysterious person, but the bullets didn't harm him at all. At this moment, Betty's parents and the others caught up, and when they saw the mysterious person, they screamed in terror that he was the ghost come back for revenge. But in the blink of an eye, the mysterious person vanished. Betty suggested that they should listen to the wizard's advice and quickly burn the mysterious person's body to make the ghost completely disappear. Then everyone went to dig up the coffin while George kept watch nearby. The mysterious person was nearby but didn't make a move. Was there some hidden secret in this? Just then, they finally dug up the coffin, but inside was actually Kate's body. Kate's parents collapsed beside the body, crying, muttering that it was all retribution. Things were becoming increasingly bizarre. That night, James and George reviewed the entire case, unable to understand why Kate's body would be in the coffin. There were no signs that the soil had been disturbed, but now, it was more important to find the missing body of the mysterious person. The next day, they found Jack's wife. After learning their intentions, she said she had received her husband's body a long time ago. Although the body was unrecognizable, her husband had indeed been missing for a long time, and he would never abandon her and their daughter. So the woman had no doubts at all and had cremated the body. The reason she didn't report to the police to investigate the murderer was that she didn't want to trouble the police. After all, even if the murderer was found, it wouldn't benefit her and her daughter at all. The most straightforward solution was simply that murderers should pay with their lives. She didn't want anyone else to be hurt and thought it was already lucky enough that the body could return. Then, James and the others found Jack's ashes. According to the woman's instructions, without hesitation, they took it aside and lit it. After completely burning Jack's ashes, everyone felt that this farce had finally come to an end. Betty's parents figured out what had happened to the missing body. They recalled that there was a couple involved in the burial who ran off to another country shortly after burying the body. Thinking back, it was likely they felt guilty, and after everyone left, secretly dug up the body and sent it home. On the other side, Charlie's mental state had improved significantly, and his relationship with his father had also eased. But was everything really over? That night, a dandelion quietly flew into the villa and slowly landed beside Charlie. Charlie, startled awake from his dreams, looked around in fear. He quickly grabbed his handgun because he found himself in the grass, and the mysterious person was standing ahead. However, the mysterious person only stayed for a few seconds before turning and leaving. Charlie immediately raised his gun and chased after him. When he finally caught up with the mysterious person, he fired several shots at him. But how could bullets possibly harm a ghost? The mysterious person smugly said it was thanks to Betty and the others that he was able to gain his freedom and no longer limited to this patch of wild grass. Hearing this, Charlie realized they had been deceived by the wizard. Burning Jack's ashes not only wouldn't make him disappear, but instead allowed him to freely roam anywhere there was grass. In the next moment, Charlie found himself back in his room. He hurriedly called Betty, but after a long time, he couldn't get through, so he left a message. He informed her about the mysterious person's newfound freedom. Then he rushed to Betty's house. Betty was still asleep. Suddenly, she sensed danger approaching. She got up and was completely bewildered because the house was inexplicably overgrown with 2-meter-high weeds. To figure out what was going on and to check if her parents were safe, she cautiously walked into the pile of weeds, but soon, she encountered the mysterious person. Seeing him baring his teeth at her, Betty screamed in terror and kept backing away, not knowing what the mysterious person intended to do. He merely showed himself before disappearing on the spot. What scheme was at play here? At this moment, Betty couldn't think too much about it and immediately ran to the kitchen to grab a fruit knife for protection. She cautiously made her way toward her parents' room. The mysterious person kept darting around, trying to intimidate Betty. In the chaos, Betty stabbed the mysterious person once. The mysterious person wailed and fell to the ground. Betty frantically continued to stab, venting her pent-up rage, especially when she saw him give her a sly smile again. Betty, losing her mind, stabbed even harder. Just then, Charlie arrived with others, but he witnessed a horrifying scene. George immediately raised his gun, commanding Betty to drop the knife, because lying on the ground wasn't the mysterious person at all, but Betty's parents, stabbed and bloodied beyond recognition. At this moment, Charlie suddenly seemed to remember something and immediately took off running, and the reality was indeed as he thought. His father had already been shot multiple times and was being lifted into a police car. On the other side, Betty finally came to her senses. Seeing her parents brutally murdered, with the bloodied knife in her hand, she was filled with disbelief and broke down in tears. But the truth was laid before her, and everything was indisputable. What awaited her and Charlie would be a prison sentence. The film ends here. This movie is based on urban legends from the Philippines. That grass maze has always been a nightmare for many. It is said to be a well-known location for murder and body disposal, combining terrifying folklore, along with a rich variety of horror elements, such as the many suffocated bodies in the film and the scene where police witnessed a throat-slashing murder. The blood and violence impact the viewer's visual senses. There were also bizarre scenes of blood spraying out of the grass, causing everyone to scream in terror. The scenes were incredibly explosive. The careful design of these visuals brilliantly enhances the horror atmosphere. The unique setting, where the killer can only appear in the grass, undoubtedly adds a lot of mystery to the film. It limits the killer's range of movement, making the grass maze even more dangerous and unpredictable. It feels as if every patch of grass hides a deadly threat, keeping the audience in a constant state of high tension during the viewing, always worried that the killer might emerge from some unexpected corner. When they began to investigate these bizarre murders, they realized that the true killer seemed to be something other than human, but rather a ghost with terrifying powers. This twist greatly enhances the mysterious atmosphere and sense of suspense. It is said that the director pursued a sense of realism, with the entire crew traveling to a remote mountain village to film the Sea of Grass, which provided the audience with a strong sense of immersion. This is one of the film's major highlights. However, the film was completed in less than a week. While this seemed efficient, it also brought numerous problems. The plot development felt rushed. The protagonists lacked sufficient build-up when discovering key clues. The case reasoning was hasty, and there was insufficient exploration of details. This severely impacted the story's logic. Character development was also very thin. The characters existed solely to drive the plot forward, lacking genuine emotions and motivations for their actions. This made it difficult for the audience to resonate with them, especially the main characters, whose combat effectiveness was truly weak. Moreover, their decision-making in the face of danger was severely lacking in logic. Knowing full well the dangers of the grass, they still went in without taking any weapons. This was incredibly foolish, making it hard for the audience to feel immersed. Not only that, the film's pacing was overall unbalanced. The early setup was overly lengthy, spending a lot of time on character backgrounds and some irrelevant plot points. This led to the revelation of the truth and the climax being too rushed in the later part. Many key clues and mysteries didn't have time to unfold and be explained, resulting in many abrupt transitions in the plot. Moreover, the killer's behavioral logic also had serious issues. In the beginning, the killer displayed characteristics of optionally attacking humans, killing people unrelated to revenge without hesitation, showing a complete lack of compassion and brutality, which created an impression of a cold-blooded killer for the audience. However, when he truly confronted the descendants of his enemies, he employed tactics. This change in behavior lacked any build-up, making it feel very forced. It gave a very awkward feeling. The terrifying image that had been built up collapsed instantly, and the audience's fear of the killer was greatly diminished. Furthermore, Kate's death was also not clearly explained, and it wasn't clarified how the body ended up in the coffin. Attentive viewers were still waiting for answers later on, but the ending abruptly cut off, which left many feeling somewhat disappointed. However, as a low-budget film, it perseveres in using real locations and attracts audiences with its unique concept. This attempt is commendable. It shows us the developmental path for low-budget films, which can showcase unique charm without relying on extravagant effects and star-studded casts. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to it. Your support is the greatest encouragement for me.